You've run the numbers 100 times. You've built the spreadsheets, projected the growth, and calculated your safe withdrawal rate down to the decimal. On paper, money isn't an issue. You should feel secure, but you don't. Because even though the math checks out, the feeling doesn't. The scarcity mindset, the one that pushed you to save relentlessly, doesn't just disappear whenever you achieve FI. Instead, it lingers, making you question if it's really enough. That's why I'm excited to have Shannah Game on the show today. She's a certified financial planner and host of Everyone's Talkin' Money. Shannah has helped countless people break free from the mental traps that keep them feeling financially insecure, even when their numbers say otherwise. In this episode, Shannah is going to help us tackle the nagging sense of not enough and share strategies to shift from a scarcity mindset to one of confidence and abundance. I hope you enjoy my conversation with the cupcake-making, money-talking millennial, Shannah Game. I really want to center most of the conversation around this concept of never having enough. And I think the financial independence community is really at fault of doing this a lot, at just moving the goalpost. Like we initially make this number and that's the number that we're chasing. And then we keep pushing that number back and back and back. And I'm not sure if it's really out of like the necessity or need, although some of it could be true if we're creating a family and now our FIRE number changes. I think most of it is probably becoming emotional for us, that we're just not quite feeling confident around this, even though if we look at the math, it totally makes sense. So I'm wondering if you have some thoughts or a hypothesis around why this fear still persists.
I will tell you, Justin, I think I would probably say like 99% of the people that I have worked with over the past 20 years being a money expert, the first thing that they tell me is some variation of, I'm afraid there's never enough. I don't think there's ever going to be enough. It feels like this common statement. You know, I spent a lot of time thinking about like, why is this? Why does this exist? And I think it really is because we are in a scarcity-driven society around money. I mean, that's kind of how the whole system works. You know, whether it's listening to podcasts or reading articles or watching the news, if you pay attention carefully, it's virtually all scarcity-driven messaging around money. And I get it. I mean, that's how they sell products. It's how we have credit cards. It's how we buy cars, you know, all of these things. But what it does is I feel like it's sort of seeped into all of our self-conscious kind of behavior around money. And so we're just accustomed to looking at it from that perspective of there'll never be enough, right? And so one of the things I like to challenge people to think about is, what is enough, right? In the FIRE community, right, you have this target number that you're shooting for, but that's just one tiny piece of the pie. And when we think about this idea of enough, I really invite people to stretch this beyond just that number, to think about, okay, what does that look like in terms of where I'm living? What am I doing for fun? Who am I surrounding myself with? Every different aspect, my health, my sleep, right? And think about this idea of enoughness from that place. Like, what does that look like for you? Because until you can create that definition of it, you're always going to feel like you never have enough, right? Because there's literally no target that you're moving towards. So I think that's a really important thing. And we're just not conditioned to think of this idea of enoughness from that perspective.
Yeah, whenever you framed it that way, I almost recognize that the one pillar of all of that, money, is the one that I feel like, okay, I have some abundance there now. And I do maybe want to start working on some of these other things like time with friends or time for my hobbies or all these other things. That's what I feel like I kind of don't have enough time for at this point in time. So reframing it and kind of moving it off this FI number target is way more interesting than just like being laser focused on like, I need this amount of money to feel really confident in taking a step in any other direction with my life and what I'm currently doing.
Well, and that really is, I think it's such an important point because I've spoken with and worked with so many people who they set this FI number, they get to that place. And then there's almost this sense of, what's my purpose now? I've only been stretching for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, whatever it is to get to this number. I've gotten here. And now this like grand illusion that I had for my life of how everything's going to be, you know, perfect and rosy, it doesn't feel that way. And this comes back to money being about 95% emotional, right? And what happens is a lot of times people then slingshot back. Like we move the target, right? And we say, okay, well, if my goal was, 4 million, now it's got to be 5 or 6. And so you put yourself energetically kind of back in that place again where you're just in the saving mode because that's what you've conditioned yourself to be. And so I think looking at this idea of enoughness from a much broader perspective helps to alleviate some of that, well, what is my life going to be about when I get to that number?
It's a little scary. And like me, even personally, I hit Coast-Fi a couple of years ago. And that's essentially, I've saved enough money that I never have to invest another dollar. And by traditional retirement age, I'll have plenty and to take care of myself for the rest of my life. And I reached this number and I still have felt the need to be aggressively contributing to my investment accounts over the last few years, rather than just like taking my foot off the gas pedal and focusing on something else. And maybe part of that is just a lot of the scarcity mindset that I have around money. But maybe part of that also is like, I don't know if I have another target or something else that I really want to focus on. And it's a little scary whenever I start thinking about that too, like redesigning how I define work and what's going to bring me joy and fulfillment there, or expanding in my interest in my hobbies and my friends and like investing more time. Like, how will that feel to me? And I don't know if I've quite really taken a step back and allowed myself to start stepping into the second phase now.
It's such a good point because you're always going to feel that tug around money and needing to save more, right? Because, I feel like sometimes we're so one-dimensional when it comes to money. And we think, again, that the luxury is going to be once we've met that goal or saved that money or we have, a certain amount in our retirement plan. But it does create another sort of problem for us if we haven't thought outside of the scope of what else does this thing look like? Like I recently had the opportunity to take a year off of work. It's sort of been something I've been planning and plotting for quite some time now. But it's funny, as I got closer to this place of being able to do it, my brain starts to just kind of go on the fritz because I'm thinking, well, how am I going to spend my time? Like, what am I going to do? How are people going to associate, me? Like, I've been tied to these things. And so your brain just creates this whole other problem. And then for me, it convinces me, well, why should I do this? So I think, it's important just to think of yourself as a whole person, and the number is important, but the other pieces I think are just as important.
Are you in the midst of that year off right now? Have you completed that year off?
I have
or
not
are you
completed.
Headed towards
I'm headed towards it. Yep.
Okay.
But in classic kind of Shannah style, I just launched this book and I'm like, oh, I want to tour this around and do these unique things. So my brain always goes to, who would I be if I never had to earn another dollar? And, for me, it comes back to, well, these are the things that I love to do. And I'm creative. I love to be on a stage. I love to chat with people. So for me, like, regardless of whatever is in my bank account, these are the things that bring me joy and give me purpose. And I think finding those things for yourself, and it could be anything, like, you shared with me before we hit record that you're a plant lover. Like, it's finding these pieces of your personality that have nothing to do with earning a paycheck or the money in your, retirement account, but the things that just light you up and bring you joy, and setting kind of goals and targets around those things.
Yeah, no doubt. We've talked about that a few times over the last, 10 or so episodes. Jordan Grummett is a guy that I reference a lot around this topic, around truly finding some purpose and identity kind of post your professional career, or essentially the phase of life of making money. And I think it's really challenging. That's not like an easy thing to do, but I think you'll be surprised whenever you give yourself some time and space to actually pursue some of that stuff.
Yeah. And I'm a probably classic type A person.
Me too. Me too.
That if I have too much time, I'm literally going crazy. I need to create something to do or some problem to solve.
I am exact same way. So I took a 7-month sabbatical, and the very first thing that I did was start a podcast, because I'm like, I need a little part-time job or something to keep me busy during this sabbatical. Granted, I love it, and it led me to where I am today, 5 years later, still podcasting and having a business around podcasting. So I'm so joyful for that. But part of me also thinks that I should have probably just taken the first month to literally do nothing. Start the day having nothing on my to-do list and just seeing where it takes me, because I've also been yearning for a couple of those moments and opportunities too. Switching gears here, I want to talk about where some of this programming might be coming from. And of course, I think through like years of frugality and saving and avoiding unnecessary expenses, like I can understand where the FI community feels this like lack of security around their FI number, even though like the numbers actually say different. But it also probably goes back even a little bit further than that. Many of my FI friends come from frugal backgrounds or backgrounds where there was never enough money around the house. And I know that's probably a big sense of some of your money programming. I think you mentioned a couple of times that like a lot of like how you look and view for money is like programmed into you by the age of 7. And it's so fun to like try to deprogram. Fun's probably the wrong word, but I'm going to use the word fun right now. It's so fun to try to deprogram some of these habits. I know one in particular that I really resonated that you talked about was critiquing your expenses. Like after you've bought something, went on a nice meal, went on a vacation, sitting and critiquing them. And it sounds like that might have come from some childhood experiences. Can you pick up the story from there?
I was brought up in a family where honestly, I never had to worry about money. I mean, it was obviously quite a luxury. We lived in several different places as a child and very nice houses. I mean, there wasn't anything that I lacked. So it's really interesting to think about these kind of money messages and these money stories in situations like that, because they're not as easy to pinpoint. But I had a father who had been in the financial industry his entire career. And so there was vocabulary around things like investing, and money was talked about, but certainly not emotions around money, and certainly not things like maybe basic level like budgeting, savings for a goal, rewarding yourself when you hit certain milestones. So what I instead picked up was that you always have to be striving for more. You always have to be striving for the bigger house, the better car, the better job, whatever that is, you name it. And that created this really bizarre, I guess, perfectionism kind of model. And, we would go on vacations and we would be like flying home. And this is back in the day where, you didn't get emailed the invoice, like they actually printed one off. And we'd be on the airplane and my dad would be like, all right, who ordered the $12 grilled cheese? It was just an onslaught of evaluating expenses to the point where at the time I didn't recognize it. But for me, I was developing this money story that money cannot be enjoyed, A, and B, you cannot spend money on anything that seems frivolous, and C, we have to pick apart every single expense. So fast forward to adulthood, it really wasn't until I was with my current husband that I really noticed this pattern. We'll go to dinner and my brain is, I don't care what the receipt says, my brain is so hyper-focused on wanting to say something like, can you believe that cocktail was $12? Or I can't believe we just spent $70. Like, it almost just automatically flows out of my mouth. And that's something I've really been working on, because you should be able to enjoy money, even if you're in the FI savings part of your journey. You've got to have some sort of enjoyment around life, around money. It cannot just be this fixed saving, always striving for more, because that again keeps that sort of slingshot back. You're gonna always come back to that behavior. So for me, it's been a long process, which I'm still doing, of deconditioning, having to attach a dollar amount to everything that I spend and letting myself buy something that, I've kind of thought through, okay, this is an intentional purchase for me. Let me just enjoy it. That actually is where the hard work for me has come in.
Yeah, me too. And it was me being with my lifelong partner too, and her kind of bringing that up to me a lot around like going out to dinner, like you were just saying there. And immediately the very first thing is not like, how great was that pasta dish, or man, the ambiance was so great, but it was like, can you imagine we just spent that much on that experience? And it's like almost deflating the fun that just came from that. And it's, stripping away some of the joy that comes from all of this. And I love that you mentioned that you need to allow yourself, even in the building process, if you're building towards your financial independence number, the things that you do spend money on, especially the things that are bringing you joy, that one-off concert that you bought tickets for, or the Christmas gift that you bought, like, don't be so fixated or attached to like the cost or the expense with there. Just like try to really enjoy and find the fun and excitement around getting and allowing yourself to spend that money, because all of a sudden you're just going to be stripping the joy away from it.
And I think also building in, this is really where it comes back to spending money based on your values and really understanding where you want money to go, but building in some reward targets. Let's say you hit your first 100,000 or 500,000 or whatever those numbers are. I think if you build in these, they don't have to be big, right? Small rewards along the journey. What it tells your brain and your body is, hey, like, we don't have to be so hyper-focused, A. B, we can enjoy this process. And then when you get to that final number, right, you've been enjoying it all the way along. And so my hope is that you're able to build out those other goals and look at yourself as a whole person, like beyond just this number.
No doubt, no doubt. So let's kind of transition away from breaking free from this scarcity mindset. You have a lot of actionable strategies that I would like to talk about. It was so fun hearing some of the things that you were recommending to really move away from scarcity mindset into abundance thinking, or, quote, healthy wealth, which I think is important. What is an actionable strategy that somebody could take if they recognize that they have some financial scarcity mindset and they want to really move towards abundance?
I have so many exercises. I'll just rattle off a few. And, I always tell people, like, pick and choose what works for you, modify something, make it your own. The first is something I call financial forgiveness. And this exercise, all of them, I will say, seem simple, right? But sometimes the simplicity of an exercise is actually what you need we don't have to overcomplicate everything.
Yeah.
So this one's really simple. It's a blank sheet of paper, a pen, and a timer for 10, 15 minutes. And I want you to just, without judging yourself, get out as many things mistakes you feel you've made, things that you wish you would have done, could have done, should have done, all of those scarcity thoughts. There's never enough, any of that. I just want you to brain dump it on this sheet of paper. When the timer's up, I want you to just step back from that piece of paper for 24 hours. Don't even look at it. Come back 24 hours with a fresh set of eyes. Just read over it. See what patterns start to emerge, right? Then the last piece is, I need you to get rid of it. We're going to burn it, shred it, throw it in the trash, whatever eco-conscious decision you want to make. But there is real science behind the process, obviously, of getting this stuff out on paper and then getting rid of it. It doesn't obviously get rid of the situation, but it tells your brain and body, hey, we don't have to hold on to that scarcity mode of thinking around these things. We can actually create a clean slate and kind of move forward. Another thing that I do, if you're somebody who likes to journal, is something I call my Hey Money letter.
This one's one of my favorites.
I have a blank journal by my bed. And every night before I go to bed, I write, hey, money, comma, and then I just share anything. Sometimes it's words, sometimes I'm cursing, sometimes I'm thankful for things. So I'm literally looking at money as if it was a person, and I'm writing to it every night to just get those thoughts or whatever happened in the day kind of out on paper. This is really helpful to avoid those like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. kind of wake up, panic, something's on your brain about money. I've been doing that practice for a little over a year, and it's probably been the most transformational. Super simple. Again, you never have to read back what you wrote. It's just getting that out on paper.
Do you ever go back and read what you wrote? Like, do you pick up a prompt from 6 months ago and just kind of see where your headspace was that day?
Sometimes I do. I try to not do it too frequently, but I would say probably every 3 to 6 months, I'll go back and just kind of randomly pick a day and remind myself ooh, that's, either ooh, good or bad. That's where I was that day. But really, I'm just looking at it as an in the moment place to just dump all of this stuff that's in my head around money somewhere, right? And just getting it out on paper is, I have found, one of the best ways to kind of start to make that transformation.
Yeah, it almost feels similar to your financial forgiveness exercise where it's just cathartic, just naming it, putting it out there, recognizing it's on your mind, and then just letting it go. I think that practice is really important in all of this.
Well, I talk about this relationship with money, and I think for a lot of people, it's kind of a new way of thinking about it. But, our relationship with money is probably the longest relationship we'll have in our lives besides with ourselves. So when you start to think about it from that perspective, if you were in a relationship with someone else and they, judged you, they, constantly told you you'll never have enough and you're bad with money and all of those other thoughts that just invade our brains, we would probably not be with that person. So thinking about money from that perspective, how can you work on this relationship in a way that it can be more of a partnership and more congenial, kind of no matter what comes your way?
That's cool. What about another exercise I wrote down that I liked was your money mindfulness moments? Can you talk through what that is and how people can use that?
There's a lot to be said about deep breathing. Again, these are things that normally we don't attach to money, but there's a couple ways I do money mindfulness moments. So I'll share a couple variations of this. One is just a simple breathing exercise called box breathing. A lot of people might know it. It's breathe in for 4 breaths, hold 4 breaths, breathe out for 4 breaths, hold for 4 breaths. Like you're literally creating a box. And what this does is just calm your brain and your body if you are in a stressful moment around money. Another exercise you can do is, I have a jar, like a mason jar, and I have literally cut out a million different activities, things to do that I've stuffed in this jar. And whenever I have a moment where I'm feeling anxious or nervous or fearful, or I have a big money decision, I pull one of these random pieces of paper out, and I literally do what it says on the piece of paper. Go for a walk, bake a cupcake, call a friend, pick up my favorite book and, read a paragraph. I mean, all of these things to create just this mindfulness. Mindfulness is really just this act of being present and being aware. And a lot of times what happens, particularly around money and certainly on the financial independence journey, is we're forward focused. And forward focused, even in a good scenario, can create a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty. So bringing yourself through mindfulness, through different exercises back to the present moment is just a way to stop kind of those squirrely thoughts going on, and that, maybe your heart is racing or your palms are sweaty or, whatever's somatically inside of you happening.
I love that. I feel like all three of those are a really great exercise to put in. One other thing to add to that, I saw this on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. This girl was saying that she has this exercise called her best day ever. And at the start of the day, she says, today's got to be the best day ever. And then she just throughout the day finds a reason
to
make this day the best day ever. And I loved that practice. I thought it was so fun to be looking for the positive and the good. And I thought it could really work well in some of this deprogramming and reprogramming around money too. And you're looking for reasons, either great reasons around money or this was one of my favorite things to spend money on today. Different reasons, gaining some positivity around money and, building a healthy relationship with money, I think could be a really good idea for especially a lot of people that are in the FI community that have seen it as a tool to a means to an ends and not necessarily all the great and the good that it could potentially do afterwards.
I love that. And I think, if you want to even take a step backwards to really look at where your, scarcity versus kind of abundant thoughts are, another thing that I usually suggest is just get your notes app on your phone and write 2 little sections, right? Scarcity or abundance, or however you want to phrase that, positive, negative. And throughout the day, every time you catch yourself having a thought about money, ask yourself, okay, is this a positive or a negative? Is this scarcity or abundance? And write a little number or a little check mark on your notes app. Don't judge yourself. Just do the practice for 24 hours. Then look at where those messages are lying. For most of us, we're going to be in scarcity, like kind of overwhelming, right? And then I think if you look at it from that perspective, then you go to the question of, or the statement of, this is my best day ever, right? And that starts to help you get in that place where, let me get more in the positive category. Let me get more in the abundant category. Let me challenge myself to do this and really change this narrative.
I love that. You're always so good about just like simple yet practical exercises. Like, I think that's what we all need. Like, we don't need this like over-engineered method to try to get to where we are. Like, even your like 1, 2, 3 method for evaluating your expenses and budgeting, I found was like really fun too. You're just, like I said, I really enjoyed researching you for these reasons of like, once again, the practical yet simple exercises you can do.
I feel like we make this so complicated. And I think that's what so many people struggle with around money, right? Is that, there's all these acronyms and jargon and, what portfolio do I pick? And I mean, there's just so many kind of mind-bending aspects that I feel even keep us further in this kind of scarcity trauma, whatever you want to call it, place around money. And so I'm always interested in, how do we create our relationship with money to be an experience that is something that we can look at from more of a curiosity perspective? And also, how do we make it more experiential? I think that's what I've always been interested in. Like, how, if we eat a good meal, right? Like, we feel it, we have a sensory experience. If we look at art or we listen to music or watch a movie, right? How can we evoke that same sort of sensory experience around money and use that as a positive motivator, to help us get to wherever we want to go, or just have a deeper introspection of, who we are and how we operate.
I love that. Shannah, you wrote an amazing book. It's actually out already, so people can grab it. It's called Unraveling Your Relationship with Money. Let's say someone picks up that book. What can they expect by reading the book?
The best I can describe it is a warm hug. I am open, transparent about my money story, good, bad, everything in between. I'm a money expert and I've still struggled with things. And I also share a lot of stories from other people where, of course, I've changed their names. But my goal is that you read this and you find yourself here, that you feel like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone, that maybe I have everything figured out, but for some reason, this money thing is still causing me anxiety or stress or feeling like there's never enough. So I really want you to be able to see yourself and know that you are not alone and that this is just a crazy journey that we're all on, and we can plan for a lot of things, but there is just so much that comes up that we can't plan for. So it's really important that we understand the emotional side of money. And that is actually something we have way more control over than we think.
Shannah, final question for you. If you had the opportunity to teach a 16-week class to a group of graduating college seniors on a topic that isn't normally covered in the classroom, what would you teach and how would you teach it?
I would absolutely teach about money story. I feel like it is one of the most critical pieces of financial success. And I really believe we could spend actually 16 weeks, which sounds crazy. But I think so much of how we operate around money, what we think about money, gosh, even our relationships with people and the, how money comes in there, how we sleep, how we have intimate relationships, so much of this comes from this story. And a lot of the story comes from before we were even born. So to not overshadow that importance, because I feel like once we get in a sweet spot there, it doesn't make everything perfect, but it helps us really kind of smooth out the ride.
I love that. If I opened up the syllabus, what would be some things, exercises, weeks, what homework assignments, what do you think I would see in something like that?
We would definitely be looking at some fun things like, we'd be examining if there was a theme song to describe your relationship with money, what would that be and why? Like, we'd have a lot of exercises like that. But we'd also be doing almost like a little bit of a, ancestry deep dive. My grandparents, great-grandparents, when they were alive, what was happening financially for them? Where did they live? What sort of stories can we dig up about them? We'd be looking into childhood messaging, but we'd also be creating the inverse to money story, which is something I call your money hero story. So what's the story of future you with cape on, doing the things you want to do? What does that look like? Because that is just as important as understanding the story of where you've come from.
That was sick. Once again, everybody, this is Shannah Game. She is the author of Unraveling Your Relationship with Money and also the host of Everyone's Talkin' Money. Shannah, this has been a blast. Thanks so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for having me.